I too would like to start off by thanking Mark and the and the GLEUBE team for the invite to present here today. And today, against quite a rocky backdrop from yesterday, I'm going to give a very short advocacy in defence of autonomy, but solely in the context for this purpose of assisted suicide. Throughout the presentation, assisted suicide and euthanasia, assisted dying, assisted killing are all used relatively interchangeably and are all designed for this purpose to mean kind of exactly the same thing. So really the question that was put to us was, what is the future of European bioethics? And the first thing that came to mind was, how would this principle or starting point, grounding point differ from the Georgetown principles, or where do we start looking for European perspectives? And I just naturally went to the Biomed 2 project, which came out with 4 principles in a similar form to that of Richmond Childress, basically looking at autonomy, dignity, integrity and vulnerability. And that led me to think, well, what is it with autonomy? It's present in the Georgetown principles, it's present in the Biomed principles. So what is it that gives autonomy kind of this global span, this unique thing that really intertwines with both sets of principles, and how can we really put a European spin on the concept of autonomy? So really I looked at now trying to contextualise it and make it more real. It's all well and good talking about autonomy and looking at the principles of it, but really I really wanted to kind of critically assess it against a subject. So I chose assisted suicide partly because within the UK the subject is very pertinent. There's been a number, it's a typo, there's been a number of very highly contentious policy and legal challenges to the current legal position. It naturally stimulates debate because it's a bipolar issue. It's people either end in the middle, but it really does stimulate debate. And I wanted to explore autonomy further because it does appear on both sets of principles, and it was interesting for me to see how one concept can have grounding in two distinct sets of principles. So looking at the current legal position within the UK, this relates to England and Wales. Section 1(2) of the Suicide Act, basically if you aid a bet, counsel procure the suicide of another, you're liable to fall foul of the rules at the discretion of the Director of Public Prosecutions, determining whether a prosecution is in the public interest, so far that they are unlikely to prosecute, but the law is there, and if it is applied strictly, anybody that assists somebody onto a plane to Dignitas, anybody that helps prepare a Molotov cocktail of a medication to be administered prior to somebody self-administering, that falls foul of the current law. Looking at that, my background is very much within law, and so I found it quite unusual that we take, if we were to apply the law strictly, a very restrictive stance compared to other statutory approaches through the Human Fertilisation Embryology Acts, the Abortion Acts, which are seen by many as being quite liberal and very progressive. So it put me in a kind of a state of distance really about where are we actually coming from, who's directing the fact that we haven't reviewed the Suicide Act officially since '61, even though questions have been asked of the DPP through the Purdy cases and the Parry cases. So really looking at autonomy and stripping it all the way back, it comes from the Greek of self-law, and in this context I really wanted to look at it through the philosophical approach and through how it's been applied in medical cases and through the medical perspective. So I initially looked at the philosophical approach and found that I kind of agreed a little bit with some Kantian philosophy there, where autonomy is demonstrated by a person who decides on a course of action out of respect for moral duty. This is an autonomous person acts morally solely for the sake of doing good independently of other incentives. A person who in my eyes, a person who has taken the decision that they want to end their life for whatever reason is doing it for reasons of perceived moral duty to potentially not be a burden on other people. They're doing it for the right reasons. They see that other people benefiting from that is independent from the actual act. They are effectively doing it for themselves. The medical perspective, really, for me, it appears autonomy is fundamental within any medical decision. I'm a strong advocate of individuality within the care environment, whether it be from individual care plans for people who are at end of life, for the person having the right to choose to accept, withdraw, or follow a certain course of treatment. But for me, the whole process of autonomy really gave rise to the doctrine of informed consent, which again took a little bit of a battering yesterday. But I'd just like to be kind of a dissenting voice or a proponent of informed consent, really, which obviously has developed over the years. But I found that there was 7 really key core elements that Beecham developed around informed consent, looking at some threshold competencies of competence and voluntariness. You have to be completely competent and have the ultimate capacity to make that decision, and it has to be something that's done voluntary. Obviously, if it's done without either of those two, you are crossing the boundaries there, and it isn't an autonomic act, it's somebody else's outside influence. And you have to be fully informed as well, so there's disclosure, there's recommendation, there's understanding. You can't have a fully informed consent decision without having the necessary information. And then that really forms into the consent element of that, where you've got the decision and the authorisation. You have to be able to prove that somebody can go through the mental decision process and give kind of a valid authorisation. So once those 7 elements are actually present, it can be said that the process of informed consent has been achieved, and that person should have control over their own destiny, whichever way that is. A lot of my thoughts and perspectives are supporting the common law as well. In the case of Riti, a Jehovah's Witness who refused a blood transfusion in an emergency care situation, the facts aren't necessarily relevant to the end of life stuff, but the issues I feel are quite pertinent and support the arguments that I wish to give on the autonomy debate. Also within Riti, it also said that basically that it was that every person has the right to refuse treatment, no matter how perverse a decision will be, so long as they have the capacity to do so, and that every adult should be presumed to have the capacity, albeit that can be refuted or be rebuffed at a later date. But it just goes to show that in Lord Donaldson's decision, he put the individual at the centre, whilst trying to balance all the best interest arguments. The individual was seen as being at the fulcrum of the whole decision-making procedure. And just build on that, the Biomed 2 project also said that the autonomy in the medical arena and lean on to informed consent shouldn't just be a permission. There should be another series of kind of unseen, unwritten checklists which ensure that that person has the necessary capacity to achieve what they want. So it's achieving the capacity to secure the end goal, to form self-legislation, to ensure that without coercion, reflection, that they've reached that decision. That decision's reached without involving other people who are personally responsible for what is going to happen at that time. It has to be a truly independent decision, and also that they have the overall capacity to give that informed consent. So it's almost like completing the feedback loop, or